Welcome back to Weekend Live. Well, a Royal Commission has described the nation's aged care industry as cruel and harmful, finding the system is in a shocking state of neglect that diminishes Australia as a nation. The interim report released on Thursday has called for more funding to be provided immediately for high-need in-home care recipients, dealing with the use of chemical restraints in residential aged care and getting 6,000 young disabled people out of nursing homes as soon as possible. Joining me now live is Professor Graeme Samuel, the chairman of Dementia Australia. Graeme, thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
Good to be with you, Danica.
These are very strong words: cruel, harmful and neglect. How do you feel when you hear this?
It's very difficult to control the emotions, but I'm heartbroken, I'm ashamed, I'm angry, because I'm part of a community that after 18 reviews over the past 2 decades has still allowed our aged person to be treated in this most disgraceful manner. It can't continue. We've had so many reviews. I'm not shocked at all, because we knew, and we've always known the problems. And if we didn't know them, we can go back to Bronwyn Bishop and kerosene baths. We can go back to Oakden and we can see the disgraceful behaviour that occurred there. But we still have another Royal Commission that's highlighted these issues. We've got to get over the emotion, and we've now got to look at the solutions, how we deal with this and deal with it once and for all. No more delay.
What are the key challenges that people living with dementia are facing, and has this report reaffirmed these issues?
Well, the report at this stage doesn't deal with dementia as such, and Linnell Briggs, one of the commissioners, indicated that when she presented the interim report. She said that'll be the subject of a specific focus in the final report. But people with dementia are in many respects like many of those that are living in aged care homes. They need support, they need tender loving care. See, this goes through to training, it goes through to the issue of antipsychotic drugs or sedatives. The training issues are so fundamentally important. We need people to be trained as to how to assist those that are aged, living in our aged care homes, or more importantly, with the in-home care. But not only do they need to be trained in the technical aspects of caring, they also need to be trained in the culture. People should not be accredited to assist those that are aged in our aged care homes or in the in-home care if they've got a culture that's akin to that, for example, of Nurse Ratched in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. You wouldn't want a whole lot of nurses in an aged care home that has got a similar culture to that. So they need to have a culture of tender, loving care for those who have lived in our community. And sorry, but I get very emotional about this.
Look, it's an extremely emotional topic, and there's a lot of aspects that have come out of this interim report. And as you said, obviously, tender loving care is the key here. One aspect I do want to go into is the use of restraints. It found that older Australians in aged care facilities are routinely being given dangerous medicines, in fact, to control their behaviour. The use of drugs as a chemical restraint to control people with dementia and effectively knock them out. How worrying is this? And not just for the patient itself, but if you have a loved one that's going through this and seeing someone they love in an aged care facility being with the use of chemical restraints.
Danica, we've talked about this before various committees of the Senate and House of Representatives over many years. It's an extremely dangerous process that's adopted by many of those who are dealing with caring for persons with dementia in aged care homes. And it's an easy way. You feed the medication, it sedates them, it's a form of restraint other than using physical restraints. In most cases, it is unnecessary. What they need is care, they need attention, they need tender loving care, but instead they're given the chemical restraint. Chemical restraint should never be administered, medication should never be administered without informed consent, either of the person that's living in the home itself, that's very unusual if they have dementia, or their next of kin, or if there is no, or their medical power of attorney, or alternatively of a fully qualified medical practitioner. In the absence of that, it should be simply forbidden. It should not be allowed. That's a very easy legislative amendment. Doesn't cost a lot of money.
In terms of the training aspect for carers, what happens here with that? How can we improve the training that goes on?
Well, it's a combination of training and providing proper remuneration. The training sort of will train people in the technical aspects of care, but what's so important is to actually understand the attitude, the culture, to understand that when you're dealing with someone who is aged, they will have various disabilities. They may be physical, they may be cognitive disabilities. And you've got to understand that, and it's a culture of understanding. Look, my dear mother-in-law, she lives in an aged care home. I'd love to name it, but she receives the most wonderful care from carers there who they're so attentive. She suffered a mild stroke just a few days ago, and they are so attentive. They've provided her with a ripple bed so as to avoid bed sores. They help her because she finds it difficult to move now, difficult to speak. All those things can be very trying, but they're all part of a culture of care. And you can't train people to have a culture of care. It's ingrained. It's part of the process. But if people don't have that culture, then frankly we don't want them around our aged persons providing so-called care in the nature that they would do it.
Graeme, there are a number of elderly people who aren't yet in the aged care system but are looking at transitioning into it in the next few years. Given the state of the system as highlighted by this interim report, how concerning is it, and what is the first step to systemic change?
I think we need two things. Clearly, we need a lot more money to go into the in-home care program. That's been on the cards for a long time, and fortunately both the Prime Minister, I noticed today that Minister Greg Hunt have indicated that there will be a commitment to that before the end of this year, that is by Christmas. That's very, very important. We know that people that are living with dementia, and frankly aged persons themselves, would prefer to be at home than to be ensconced in an institutional environment such as an aged care home. But there's another really important element, and again it doesn't cost a lot of money. So we now have a merged Aged Care Quality and Safety Commission, Janet Anderson and her team. And what I would say to them is transparency leading to consumers being able to make an informed choice is a far better regulation than all the regulations you can apply and pass through Parliament. See, if consumers can make an informed choice, they'll soon sort out those who are inappropriate, those who are providing inappropriate care, whether it's at home or in an aged care home itself. Now, the Aged Care Quality and Safety Commission has started to do this. They have some elements, for example, of complaints procedures that are shown on the website, but they're only the most extreme. They're the directions that they give once complaints have been determined and that they've proven that they're very, very serious indeed. I would say, frankly, all complaints ought to be shown on the website, and the manner in which the Commission deals with the complaints ought to be shown on the website. That leads to accountability on the part of both the providers of aged care and, frankly, on the part of the Commission, that they're dealing with the complaints properly, efficiently and in the right manner. Then they have what they call CERs, which is consumer experience reports. They've started those in respect of those living in aged care homes. They've said in January this year, I might say nearly 11 months ago, that they're planning on having CERs for those that are at home for the provision of care at home. I would say get your running shoes on, Janet, and your team. Produce more of these, but produce them in a very accessible manner. Now, fortunately, I don't have too much cognitive impairment at my age, but I've looked at their website, I've tried to access it, and I've sort of put myself in the position of someone who is saying, my parent might need to go into an aged care home or might need at-home care. And I've got to tell you, it is almost impossible to try and make a comparison of the 3,500, I think we have, of aged care homes that are there, to be able to say, well, if I look at the locality that I'm interested in, what are the aged care homes that are in that locality to make it convenient for me to be able to visit a parent, as the case may be? What are those that are ranked? I'd rank them the way that we now rank health insurance: gold, silver, bronze and junk. And let it be seen there so that people can turn around and say, I know now where I should go and I know where I should avoid going, not only for an aged care home, but also for at-home care itself. And that way we'll start to sort out those that are inappropriate, cast them aside into the rubbish heap. And fortunately, I hope as a result of that, the consumer will be able to get to a result where we no longer have the disgraceful processes that we've seen revealed in the Royal Commission.
Certainly a lot to think about, and clearly, as this interim report highlights, there is a need for urgent change. The full report will be handed down next year. Professor Graeme Samuel, the Chairman of Dementia Australia, thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
Thanks, Tanika.